Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining all of us at Workers' Comp in Motion for today's webinar themed Faster Return to Work, Work Conditioning, Hardening, and Functional Capacity Evaluations. We're very excited about today's presentation as Workers' Comp in Motion has recruited a subject matter expert to help equip us on this important subject. For those of you that don't know who I am, my name is Carlos Luna, Vice President of Marketing for a company called Risico, based out of Fresno. We are a workers' compensation third-party administration company, managed care organization, and insurance provider to thousands of customers throughout the state of California. I have the pleasure of being your host for the day. Workers' Comp in Motion would like to give a great big thank you to our sponsors for today's webinar. They include Siegel, Moreno and Stetler, Institutes of Health, NewQuest, ClaimLogix, MacroPro, ProCare, GenX, Corvell, iRatings, Learning Services in partnership with Remed, Ember Court Reporters, Dental Works, California Orthopedic Institute, Optum, MedRisk, Merge Investigations, Work Partners, and of course, Risico. Please be advised that CEU credits will be provided to all California adjusters, and we'll be announcing raffle winners following this presentation. So be sure to stick around to see if you've won anything. Also, please be advised that we've allocated a time at the conclusion of the presentation for questions from the audience. You can use your chat box in the bottom left-hand corner to relay those questions and then click enter, and I'll be sifting through them, moderating them, and then presenting them to our panelists today for her thoughts. You're all in for a very insightful presentation. For many of you that have followed my career over the last 10 years in workers' compensation, you know how passionate I am about return to work. Really, it's been a passion of mine since the inception of my career. It's my belief, and it's supported by the data out in the industry, that there are very real physiological benefits to expedited return to work. In fact, a failure to promptly return an injured employee to work can mean a material delay in disability duration. So any tool that we can harness and that we can use in supporting that injured individual back to productivity and back to productive endeavor at work, I think is a great deal of benefit for every employer, TPA, and carrier out there. So without further delay, please help me welcome Ann Marciniak. Ann, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? And I also want to put you on the spot today. Can you share a little something that not a lot of people know about you, just to help us connect with you today?
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Carlos, and I appreciate the opportunity. I share your passion about getting people back to work and hope to be able to shine some light on that. I am a physical therapist and doctor of physical therapy for the last 27 years now. Something a lot of people may not know about me, but more by the day, is that I have one of those inflatable dinosaur outfits, and I tend to put it on and blow it up whenever I feel the need for some joy. It came in extremely handy over the last year and a half, being my personal protective equipment. So yes, I was able to actually hug people because I was in the blow-up dinosaur outfit, and that was deemed safe. So made me seem less crazy than it did about a year and a half ago. I have been not only a licensed physical therapist, but I've done a lot of on-site and safety prevention. I also train clinicians on how to do work conditioning, work hardening, and FCEs. I've taught classes for that and weekend CEU courses. So I'm excited to be able to share this with you and like I said, shine some light on these return to work programs. Objectives are today, I hear over and over again, anytime I'm talking about work conditioning and hardening, what is the difference? So we're going to talk a little bit about how to answer that question. Also really position how you can utilize work rehab, work conditioning, and work hardening programs for a successful return to work. Understanding the role of FCEs in return to work decision making. So often with work conditioning, work hardening, FCEs or an evaluation of functional information goes in line with that. And then identify what are the important components of an FCE. I'll mention this a few times, but there have been studies that show there's between 600 and 800 different types of FCEs. So it's difficult sometimes to determine what are the good ones. How do you decide if you're getting a good quality product? So I'll talk a little bit about what should be in FCEs and how you can tell the difference between a good product and one that won't really help you fulfill your needs. Just going to go through overview and background of some of the problems, physical therapy and occupational health as a whole, and then dive into advanced work rehab programs, so work conditioning or work hardening. FCEs, again, the components and reporting. More importantly, sometimes it's how to interpret the report. You can have a tremendously good FCE, but then have difficulty reading it. So going to translate some of that for you and then do a little wrap up. Carlos and I talked about it prior to this. One tidbit I didn't give you early on is that I am originally from Maine. We mumble as our first language, so if there's anything you don't understand or want me to talk a little softer or slower or have questions as you go, flag them to him and he'll interrupt me as he needs to, just to make sure you get the most out of this. An overview, I had the pleasure to meet Dr. Richard Pimentel. He is an attorney by nature. He's taught. He was a Vietnam veteran and was actually injured at war, came over, and they told him he really didn't qualify for VA benefits because he had lost his hearing. He wouldn't be able to work, any of those. So he really kind of championed return to work for injured veterans, for injured workers. He coined a phrase years ago, you don't get well in order to return to work, you return to work in order to get well. So I've always kind of taken that in my therapy and rehab world on, I think it's very important to start people into function as quickly as possible to get them back to work as a form of treatment. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go through. So the runaway train, what happens with injuries? Typically, this time of year, everybody seems to be getting back on the roller coasters and things with weather getting better. But what happens is somebody experiences an injury. The employee reports pain. A lot of times there's a consultation or investigation. That can lead to a physician visit or investigation of what's happening and diagnosis and the initial injury and body part. Then typically you have a conservative management for the case. They might be referred to a specialist, which can spiral into its own group of circumstances. They may or may not have surgery. They'd have some post-op therapy, and then the goal is they return to work, all is well, the sun sets, and everybody goes off into the sunshine. We would hope that happens in all of your cases, but we know that's not always the case. A lot of times what happens is they get through all of this treatment and those steps, and then there's a gap between what they can do and what they have to be able to do for work. So now their arm goes up overhead and they're nice and strong, but they have to be able to lift 70 pounds up overhead in order to be able to go back to work. And those two things don't necessarily always happen with each other. So what types of things do we do to bridge that gap? That is really where we're here to talk about your work conditioning, your hardening programs, your FCEs, and those pieces. They should not be stunted different parts. They shouldn't be disconnected. They all should be able to kind of flow into each other and meld right in and be part of the same continuum. Research over the last 5 to 10 years has shown that it's very necessary to make decisions and to kind of make sure that the case flows appropriately. It used to be 6 months was that cutoff for 50% return to work or not. If somebody's off work for 6 months, there's a 50% chance they'll be able to go back successfully. Now they're finding that probably the most important window for musculoskeletal disorders is from 4 weeks to 4 months. That's a really critical time to determine that case velocity, positive outcomes. If there's a risk for poor outcomes, we kind of consider that the danger zone, trying to keep them out of that disability mindset and keep them from having poor outcomes for return to work. So the first thing, physical therapy. That was a touch point along a few parts of the roller coaster. So types of things that you should see in physical therapy. It's been said that occupational health patients are a little bit different with this because their goals differ a lot. A goal that you should always see in any PT note for your workers is returning to work. If they're not already working full duty, you should see that goal in there. So don't be afraid to ask if you don't. If you see that you want them to be out of pain and their range of motion to be 75 degrees and they want to be able to jog and play with the kids, all those are important things, but you also should see that they're able to return to work full duty. Usually you see a treatment progression through their initial physical therapy. The initial phase or acute phase, oftentimes you will see modalities, which are your ultrasound, E-stim, passive motion activity modification. They should be educating the patient on how not to exacerbate their injury. And a lot of times it's more the quote-unquote feel-good parts of therapy. That shouldn't last very long. Anybody that's been through physical therapy may tell you it's not always fun and games and massage and good stuff. You should very early on see them progress into active motion, movement retraining, basic strengthening, trying to get that mobility, flexibility, and strength back. And then in the subacute phases of therapy, you should see them do functional training, dynamic strengthening. As somebody that does case reviews for MedRisk and oversees our team of case reviews in the clinical services department, we talk to therapists every day. Some of them I'll talk to about starting into functional training. It's a flight attendant. Are you lifting bags? Are you pushing and pulling anything? And sometimes I'll hear them say, well, that would be work conditioning, wouldn't it? I give therapists permission every day to feel free to do functional training. Work simulation is not just for work conditioning programs. We should start kind of with that functional focus on day one. And nothing means more to a patient for strengthening than doing something that is functionally oriented or a work simulation. Instead of pulling on a rubber band over and over again, if you can have them lifting even an empty bag or luggage or doing something that seems to reflect their job, you're going to get a lot further in therapy. And again, it helps get them out of that disability mindset. They feel that they're doing something to prepare them for safely going back to work. So we should usually see that towards the end of physical therapy just in order to prepare them in general. Again, PTs are uniquely positioned to manage occupational health challenges. We spend a lot of time with patients. Usually their therapy sessions are over an hour now. And things. So that's a whole lot of time to build that relationship and talk to them about what it takes to get back to work. PTs and OTs understand restoration of function very well. We're trained to provide objective evidence of submaximal effort. So there are actually objective tests to show you, are they consistent? Are they trying? Did they give effort? Or did they stop because of pain or another reason? And effective diagnosticians, if there's something else physically that's keeping them from being able to make progress, if there's something that maybe hasn't been diagnosed up till now, PTs can be very helpful and effective in raising those red flags and giving an indication that something else may need to be investigated or they might need to return to the physician for additional diagnostics. There was a study done in 2006 by Childs that showed with diagnostic accuracy, kind of the top three were orthopedic physicians at 94%, but then right afterwards were PTs, either with orthopedic or sports certification or without, were between 74 to 81%. So about 3/4 to 80% of the time we're able to make effective diagnostic predictions, again, giving an idea of red flags and those sorts of things that may impact the case or keep them from getting that positive resolution. So a little bit about, again, the end of therapy. Let's go into work conditioning and work hardening. Advanced work rehab, some injured workers are able to go back to work, either light or modified duty. I will tell you, even though I teach that, that is always my preference. The sooner you can get them back to work, for those that have effective light duty programs and nothing precludes you safety-wise from doing that, get them onto the job site. One of the distractions sometimes or cons about going back to work is light duty programs might be a little bit too easy. If you have something to where they're only lifting 5 pounds or they're sitting all day and they're really not up on their feet, that might not be conditioning them to be able to go back to that heavy job or repetitive lifting. So there's actually some programs called transitional return to work, where instead of just doing a restricted duty, they are lowering their restrictions. They're lifting more week by week. The physician signs off on that plan. It's kind of a progressive light duty program. Where that is not available, work conditioning hardening can be great solutions for that, again, preventing them from being off and not doing anything. On average, work conditioning is up to 4 hours a day. Work hardening can be up to 8 hours a day, 3 to 5 days a week, or every day. Again, that can be a reflection of what the actual work environment is. We have a lot of flight attendants that don't work every day. So a lot of times it wouldn't be appropriate to do treatment to reflect something that they're not actually doing for their work environment. You should usually see average anywhere from 4 to 8 weeks, and we'll talk about admission criteria in a minute, but programs that are lasting less than that or a lot longer than that, they may have gotten in either too early or too late in order to make that effective. What is work conditioning? It's an intensive program. It's goal-oriented, specifically designed to get their mobility, flexibility back, restore their strength, power, and endurance, motor function, which might be proprioception or balance or control, and also cardiovascular and pulmonary functions. The whole idea that it's called work reconditioning or conditioning means a lot of times you are having to get your aerobic capacity back in order to do your full duty job, things over an 8-hour day. So that many times is an important component of these programs. The objective is to get their physical capacity and function back to be able to get them back to work, whether it be at that original job or if for some reason they're not able to return to that, to maximize their functional ability into the highest physical demand level possible. What's the difference between PT and work conditioning? We'll talk a little bit about the difference between work conditioning and hardening, but I think even more distinct is the difference between acute therapy and your work conditioning and hardening programs. Again, if you are somebody that reviews notes for your cases, they shouldn't look the same. You shouldn't look at a note and say, I don't know if this is physical therapy or work conditioning. They should look very different. They should be very different programs. They shouldn't just use the PT note and start work conditioning without doing a new eval or without it being different. On behalf of therapists who I love, that's just lazy. They should not be doing that. So we discourage it. But work conditioning is different. So the sessions are more intense. They should be longer in duration. Again, the majority of PT sessions are about an hour, up to an hour and 15 minutes in length. Work conditioning usually isn't too much less than 2 hours. in order to include all those. It's return to work goal oriented. You're not really focused just on managing pain or symptoms. You can manage some work conditioning programs. They'll use modalities just as an adjunct to be able to complete the program, but it's not the main focus. And probably one of the main differences is this is whole body treatment. When you're doing acute therapy, you might be focused just on the shoulder, just on the low back, or whatever the body part is at the injury. For work conditioning, work hardening programs, you're treating the whole body. What does it take to be able to condition everything to be able to go back? You don't function only with a specific body part. You don't lift only with your shoulder. So, again, it's something that you are looking at overall function for your body as a whole. Work conditioning should not be PT with some box lifts. Again, it should look different. You should see a lot of different components, especially when it comes to time and work simulation and amount of time in the program. So it shouldn't just be the same therapy rubber bands, but then you lift a box 5 times. That's not a work conditioning program. You deserve better. Who provides work conditioning? Many times it's PTs, OTs, assistants as well. Not every provider does this. It does take a specific amount more space and equipment in order to do this. So again, it doesn't have to be a huge aircraft warehouse type environment, but you usually need a little bit more space and some more equipment to be able to do this safely. I used to tell people when I screened facilities, if you call a clinic and ask if they do work hardening and they have to go ask, they probably don't. The person answering the phone typically is complaining 3-4 times a day about how noisy the work conditioning is, so they should know very well that they offer it. Just a general tip if you're running short on time. That can be a 30-second phone call to confirm. Work hardening, that kind of takes on an additional thing. It's very similar to work conditioning, but it's highly structured, goal-oriented. Typically, these are multidisciplinary in nature. You might have a cognitive behavioral approach to it, a vocational rehab functions. They address the issues of productivity, safety, in addition to your physical tolerance and worker behaviors. Work hardening used to be set aside for people that had been off work an extended amount of time and to try to get through some of the biopsychosocial issues to be able to help them back to work. That went away a little bit with more light-duty programs and people weren't off work quite as long, but we still do see it referred to today. Work hardening will assist them with return to work while minimizing the risk of re-injury or give them a sound vocational direction if they don't have a specific job to return to. Again, usually you will see PTOT and some vocational rehab or biopsychosocial cognitive behavioral service included in this. Again, it's designed to restore physical behavior and vocational function to be able to get them back to work. Similar people provide it. Again, with this, often you will see some other services consulting in the program or included in treating the patient at that. I will tell you, after 26, 27 years of doing this, work conditioning or work hardening are often used interchangeably. Like I said, we get questions a lot of times on how are they different. I've given you the overall definitions, but every physician who orders these or everybody that refers for them is slightly different. I just reviewed a case this week where the physician said, continue physical therapy, start work hardening, which normally would initiate a referral to that. Right below the words start work hardening were start to wean from boot. So the patient was still in a cast boot, and the patient or the physician was saying to start work hardening. What the physician meant when we called to confirm was to start some work simulation activities and start the patient into functional activities, which we were able to incorporate into his physical therapy program. If the patient was just getting out of a cast boot, he really wasn't ready for an 8-hour-a-day program. So be aware some physicians will use both of these interchangeably. except for a few states like Ohio and Florida that require CARF accreditation for work hardening. It is the same CPT code. It's the same billing code. So again, they're very, very similar in program and in format. Program entry criteria, again, this is an important thing because you should, despite the fact that they're kind of used interchangeably, you should see a very distinct difference between this and acute therapy. Program entry criteria, they must be able to, unable to safely return to work. I've seen some notes where they say the patient's working full duty, but they're doing work conditioning. They shouldn't need it if they're working full duty. So they have no pathology that would contraindicate participation, no psychopathology. They have to have a return to work goal. Again, it can be to maximize function for a physical demand category, or it can be a specific job. No non-related medical problems. All that should be stable. They should pass medical screenings and those things, and again, have a physician referral for it. Within my role with the network, we have had several clients that have had issues with a lot of people being referred into work conditioning and some concerns. We did a pilot study looking at work conditioning, work hardening referrals and kind of some cutoffs on if they were appropriate coming in or out. We found during a retrospective study, we set it up to where 3 visits or less of work hardening, we figured they weren't appropriate for the program. Either they didn't need it in the first place or they weren't able to tolerate it. Not a lot of people get better in 3 visits or less. And then we also identified over 30 visits in the program probably meant that they might have gotten in a little bit too soon and not really been able to get the full benefit or effect of it. If they go in too early, they might be in for an extended amount of time. You typically don't want to see somebody in this type of program for 60 to 70 visits. In many states, it's much more expensive, so you don't want to see that. So we set those parameters from 3 to 30 visits in the study. We found that about 18% of the referrals that we got for that year, they fell outside of that established parameters. So we stipulated that about 18% of those referrals likely were inappropriate. What we did from there is we set up a screening criteria and said for people that are looking at going into work conditioning, here's who would, or work hardening again, interchangeably, but these are the people that would be most appropriate. Again, they need to be medically stable. We have a lot of people that kick out because of heart rate or blood pressure issues from being off work for an extended period of time. For the most part, job demands are in the medium, heavy, or very heavy physical demand level, so they have a heavier level job. Usually those lend themselves to the need for a conditioning type program. They're currently not working full-time or full duty. Again, it is difficult for somebody to work for 8 or 9 hours a day and then come in for 2 to 3 hours of a conditioning program. So they shouldn't likely be working full-time and then try to come in and do the program. And then we kind of set this as just a rule of thumb, both for lifting and positional tolerance. They should be able to tolerate some form of work simulation and be able to lift or function in positions at about 30% of what their job goal is. Say they have to be able to lift 100 pounds for work. Usually people will gain 5 to 10 pounds of strength per week in your typical program. If they can only lift 5 pounds when they start, they're going to be in the program for 3 months or more in order to get better. So it might be better to keep them in therapy for a little bit before they would start into work conditioning, and then that would keep them from being in for an extended period of time. Again, if they aren't able to tolerate any type of work simulation, you don't want to find that out in the first day or 2 of the program. They should be trying that in therapy before they come in. So these were just some general rules that we set up as guidelines to who would be appropriate to come into the program. And then lastly, the client not returning to the doctor in the next 10 days. That was more of a general rule of thumb. because the doctors had a tendency to release people back to work a week after they started in the program. So we wanted to make sure that we were communicating well. Long story short, when we started with these guidelines, we were at about 18% inappropriate referrals. That shrunk down to 2% after instituting this, and we saw a lot of good outcomes. So it's something to feel free to use, communicate with your therapist about, or those sorts of things. Just kind of looking at, do you feel like they're appropriate to start? Documenting function, this is a big part that you should see also. Like we said, there is a difference oftentimes between physical therapy notes and then your work conditioning, work hardening notes. A big part is function. You should see a work-related goal. What do they have to lift? And you should see that they are progressing towards that week over week. Again, job-related goals for treatment. And they really should be able to dissect out what are the return-to-work barriers, set them as goals, and give you a progress update on a weekly basis. Positional tolerance, again, how long can they sit, stand, squat, kneel, lift capacity, how much can they lift and how often, whether it be occasional, frequent, or constant. What ranges? They might not have any difficulty lifting up to waist level if they're a shoulder patient, but do they have to lift overhead? And are they showing progress with that? Did they tolerate work simulation activity, whether it be using tools, pushing a wheelchair, climbing, on and off of activities and things? Addressing barriers, kind of, again, one of the biggest things is making sure that there's a common goal. We said as far as an entry criteria, there has to be a return to work goal. Everybody should be on the same page in the very beginning. You don't want to find out 3 or 4 weeks into a program that person doesn't want to go back to that job. So you want to make sure that you get that good clinical judgment and problem solving, and that you're all working towards the same goal. One thing as a therapist that I really appreciate from you and can help a lot is if you have a good job description or a job analysis of what the different physical demands are of the job. 9 times out of 10, the patient will tell us they have to lift 200 pounds all day long. So it's very, very helpful if we know that in actuality it's only 50. That's going to save you a long time in the program and things. So as you're referring them in, also look at it. Do you have a good source of what the work demands are? Even if it's a questionnaire that you give to the employer, if it is a job-specific return to work, being able to get those job demands is so important. Patients should be informed about their injury. Education is a big piece of these programs. Again, we're really trying to get them more into functional activity, and a big part of that is confidence, believing that they're making progress and then they can go back. Progressive activity, quota systems, pacing, activity modification, all these are things that we use in order to assist them with the return to work process. So early graduated return to work or remaining at work is great. Like we talked about, if there is transitional programs, what we've also done with some work conditioning is we can do it half of the day. A lot of programs are up to about 4 hours, and then they do light duty the other half of the day. So if you're set up and insurance and state laws allow you to do that, it's not a bad solution in order to increase their tolerance during the day to different activities and keep them off the couch and keep them from getting further deconditioned. So the benefits of return to work, again, the sooner they're back to work, the sooner they're able to step foot out there, the better. So making sure that we do interaction and those pieces, the more we can get an idea about how to simulate those job demands and help them to feel comfortable doing those, the better. And also being able to give the physician that information on, here are the job demands, here is what they demonstrated during therapy over and over again, usually helps them with that return to work release and decision making. Again, Why are some people unable to return to work following acute PT? I'm not sure how well you can see this if you have a smaller screen, but there's a lot of different reasons. Can be pain. I have really heavy lifting requirements, highly repetitive work. I have to be in sustained postures, and I'm just not able to sit that long. Unique job demands. Comorbidities, even into your fear avoidance and some of the fear or catastrophizing that you may see with work. Almost all of these can be addressed in work conditioning. The greens are absolutely yes. The yellows are things that can positively respond to work conditioning or hardening. The only thing that we really don't see responds well are people that are non-compliant. If you don't show up to the program, we're not going to be able to make you better. Or submaximal effort. If you are not giving effort and you are not able to participate in that, or you have inconsistent participation, any of those aspects, then you may not get a good outcome from the program. Again, if you're not showing up or those. Everything else is definitely a yes or a maybe. We can do very positive things with comorbidities, fear avoidance, catastrophizing, through those education, activity modification type things. All of those can respond well and benefit from this. So really the only two factors are non-compliance and submaximal effort. And Carlos, there have been some questions popping up about the presentation. In case, just so people aren't too worried, we will be given the opportunity to have this before you go and things. And there's also a recording, which we are making available. So for those of you that are tired of taking notes or weren't able to see it, rest. You'll be okay.
Yes, thank you for that reminder, Ann. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely, absolutely. I was a note taker in school, so, and I went back to get my doctorate in my 40s, and oh my gosh, it was, I forgot what it was like to be in class again, so it's not easy. We'll make it easy on you. Psychosocial barriers, again, sometimes this is as big of a part to the return to work process as the physical portion or the physical injury. That can be fear of re-injury. It can be a catastrophizing the injury itself, blowing it out of proportion. All these things can be looked at and addressed both in PTOT as well as work conditioning and hardening programs. There's very good peer-reviewed literature references to show that those are addressable and those are correctable. Again, that 4 to 16-week window is one of the most important to be able to impact these, but they can be. So a little bit about FCEs. Anytime I do get questions about work conditioning, work hardening, it always seems to pop up that people ask about FCEs as well, because many times they go hand in hand. The biggest thing about work or functional capacity evaluations or work capacity assessments are they're there to look at what is the balance between the work demands and the work capacity, what they can do versus what they have to be able to do. An FCE or functional capacity evaluation should be a measure of the current level of function and should be able to compare those to physical job demands. Again, if you give an overview of what the work demands and physical demands of the job are, we can tell you if the person can or cannot do them. Activities tested can include balancing, carrying, climbing, fingering, stooping, walking, crawling, lifting, pushing, pulling, all different areas of function. There's a lot of different variety, as we mentioned. There's 600 to 800 different types of FCEs out there. It does not need to be a vendor test in order to be a good test. There's a lot of well-established, very good vendors out there, but there's also tests that were made by the facility itself based on the peer-reviewed literature references, and they are extremely good tests. So on the flip side of that, there's some people that buy tests and don't do them right. So, you know, it's a cohesion between the vendor test or the test itself and who's administering and how they're administering it. Objectives of the FCE are to be able to tell you for job placement decisions, return to work, identify if there's things that they have difficulty doing and they might need accommodation. What we found a lot of times is people can do 80% or more of their job. So would we be able to identify things that they could do with a accommodation and then be able to go back to work full time and work towards being back full duty at the job site? So, or intervention and treatment planning. As we just talked about with work conditioning and hardening, the one item that keeps them from being able to successfully go through a work conditioning or work hardening program is that they're non-compliant or they're giving submaximal effort. It's important sometimes to know that. So if you have any question about if they're giving effort or if they're being consistent with their performance, sometimes that's when it's good to do an FCE first. Many times we have people ask, when should I do one? Should it be right before they go back to work? Should it be at the end of the program? Should it be at the beginning of the program? As with most things with therapy, it just depends. If you are concerned about effort, do it first. If you're not and you're more looking at can they go back and do their full duty job, do it at the end. If you have questions, call us. We'll tell you. That's what we do with clinical review. We will answer your questions. So we look forward to consulting and working with you on that, but ask. So when do we do them? Again, it can be anywhere along this continuum. Not as much in the middle, but occasionally they're in the beginning, occasionally they're at the end. It just depends on why you want it. Utility of FCEs. FCEs are one component to if they can go back to work. It's if they meet the physical demands of the job, but there might be other issues. Some of them medication-based, some of them cognitive or memory if it's a brain injury and those things. So again, it's one piece of the puzzle. But without functional information or without a comprehensive functional evaluation, how are you deciding if the person can go back? I've asked this to a lot of physician groups because they have to decide. Sometimes they ask the patient, do you think you can go back to work? And depending on their mood, the patient says yes or no. Or they kind of look at them and say, well, you look big enough, you look strong, you look good. I'll look at the PT note, your strength is 4 out of 5. Again, my preference is always to give you an objective and functional outcome rather than an educated guess and those things. So administration of an FCE, one quality standard for an FCE that I tell people over and over again is time it takes to do it. It really shouldn't take less than 2 hours. If you are looking at what a person can do on a full-time basis, with an 8-hour day being the standard, or if they have to do more than that, if somebody is testing the patient in just an hour or less than 2 hours, they're probably not looking at all those things that it takes for them to do endurance through a full day. They are not limiting the amount of time it takes to do the FCE. For your benefit, typically, it's to keep them from having to spend as much time. So just be wary. We usually recommend 2 hours or more. That is supported by literature to be a valid representation of can they do an 8-hour day. So be wary of those that are a quick test. If your job only requires a 50-pound lift or just occasional lifting, that may be something that you can look at in a little bit less time. But for standard jobs that require frequent lifting or that you have endurance demands on them, you need to be a little bit wary of shorter tests because typically they're extrapolating the data. Oftentimes done by PTs or OTs. They can be done by physicians, chiropractors. Every state law is a little bit different. The way that I usually look at it is an evaluation. It's not just a test. It's not just a series of tests. so it should reflect what your state laws are about who can do evaluations. Good indications on why to do them: the patient plateaus, there's a delayed return to work, discrepancy between what they say and objective findings, again, if there's a question about consistency or effort, job placement decisions or disability determination, or sometimes I've had just people that are on work restrictions forever. They send them in for the FCE. We prove they can do much, much more than the work restrictions, and then the work restrictions go away. So that's a win-win for the FCE as well. Key questions. This is my slide to give you permission to ask questions. If you haven't been asked this before, if you're referring somebody for an FCE and it is an expensive test, ask questions. So tell them what you want to know. Tell them, you know, I had one come in from a disability company that had 27 different questions they wanted us to answer, and we did. So the more we know about what you want to know, then we know what to answer with that. So some examples of these can be return to work. Are they given true effort? What are their safe, permissible functional abilities? Can be specific about balance. Some people ask, how did they get there? Did they drive? All of these things. Physical demand categories, you should see standard language in the FCE. The physical demand category, according to the U.S. Department of Labor, are sedentary, light, medium, heavy, and very heavy. You should get that outcome at the end of the FCE. They should tell you what category they're in. And then also for frequency, either lifting or positions, never, occasional, frequent, or constant. Those are the industry definitions. Not infrequent, not meets minimum standard, not required, not, you know, non-restricted or restricted. These actually have definitions to them, so that's what you should see coming out of your FCE. The FCE report should have at a minimum stated purpose of the FCE and then answer it. So again, if it's a return to work test, you should get an answer on if they meet or don't meet the job demand. What are the abilities of the claimant? What can they do for lifting and positions? Compare the physical abilities to the demands of the job. Again, we need to know what the demands of the job are, so send over a job description if it's available. Document the level of their participation. Sometimes it's called consistency, sometimes it's called effort, sometimes it's called self-limiting, any of those, but you should get an overall idea of did they give true effort, because if not, you don't know if it's a valid or reliable FCE. Recommend return to work status, timing, modification, further interventions. If you want to know about if they'd benefit from treatment, include that in your questions. Otherwise, we discourage people from recommending treatment as part of an FCE unless it's been asked for. Nothing keeps you from closing a claim faster than recommending treatment that you didn't want. So be wary about that. So in summary, did they give maximum effort throughout? Was it variable effort or inconsistent self-limiting? Can they return to work full duty at their previous position or a modified level? So just wrap up again, this is something that I have up on my bulletin board I think about every day. The return to work rate, as Carlos said in the very beginning, getting people back to work is so very important. At 6 months, only 50% of people go back to work. At a year, it's 10%. At 2 years, it's about 2%. With me, our average age of people that we're treating is usually 35 to 45. So if somebody that age can't go back to work, it's not really good for their health. So I don't look at it as I'm forcing people to go back to work. I look at it as I am saving their life. and you can feel free to join in that. Let's go save some lives together. And just to prove the first statement that I made, this is me at my desk. So I am going to open it up now to questions. After Carlos, you asked me that question, I changed my slides real quick and things, but I will open it up to any questions you have. And hopefully the fact that people were asking for the presentation was a good sign. Hopefully not just to send to folks that are doing 1 hour FCEs.
Well, Anne, thank you so much. It's so much great information that you provided for us today. And frankly, I agree with you in terms of saving somebody's life. There really has to be a paradigm shift in terms of how we look at return to work. It shouldn't be the thing at the end of the road that we want to do. It should be part of the care process for the injured employee to get them well, to get them back to work, right? So I really appreciated the quote by Dr. Pimentel, I believe it was, at the beginning of your presentation. I've quoted him many, many times. So along those lines, and if an organization is looking to make a paradigm shift in return to work, and sometimes their modified duty availability is an issue, right? So there are some organizations that are safety sensitive that just cannot have employees unless they're available to return to work full duty, return to work. What guidance would you give them? How can they still be able to support employees in return to work with those limitations taken into consideration?
Oh, absolutely. That's a great question, and I think shown very well. They've looked across the industry, and as I'm sure most of the people on the phone know, the case velocity and getting patients into treatment, getting them assessed and into treatment is such a big piece in that. They've shown that the sooner you get people into treatment, the sooner they get out. So even in absence of a transitional work program or any of that, avoiding delays with treatment and avoiding delays in getting people, even if it's something to where therapy is going to be 4 weeks, making sure that they have doctor's appointments or there's not a delay in getting back to that is a big piece. So the sooner you can get people through the rehab process. There are certain states, it just depends on where you are, where you can go and do volunteer work as a light duty option. So if you have somebody that would not be allowed for safety reasons like flight crews or things you aren't allowed to do light duty in flight, sometimes they've had the option to go and do a volunteer thing as their light duty option. And be paid for that. And then again, early entrance into a work conditioning or work hardening program to get them conditioned up to be able to do this. So I think there's a lot of different ways, but kind of avoiding delays in the process I think would be a big thing in order to get them back. And just communication. I've talked to a lot of different risk managers who said they had people returning to the workforce that said, I've been out for 4 to 5 months and no one ever contacted me from the employer. So keeping in touch with your employees, just making sure that they know you want them back, and getting back is I think, a big piece of that.
Absolutely. No, I agree with you 100%. We have another question. So let me ask this to you. What is the best way in your experience to identify light duty options via volunteer work? Are there resources out there? Where can we point our audience today to look for those resources?
Oh, that's a great one. I'll look into that. I may have to email you and ask some folks and whatnot, because again, it has to do kind of with state law. I would say find out and make sure you're allowed to do it first off. The things that would preclude you from that also sometimes are collective bargaining agreements. So even though your state law may allow you to do it, if it's not allowed, I worked with some groups out of Vegas where it was considered not sustainable or was considered demeaning work for that specific union. So just make sure it's not precluded by the union. And then it may even be something that your organization works with. If you're looking for specific charities or different to do that, then just make sure that there's not any stipulations that you have that they don't, or vice versa. If it's a organization that deals with money or children or other things like that, there might be some background considerations, but where to go find them? I haven't had to find them myself. It's more been the company. So I would start with your legal and just start with your HR departments and risk and see if that's an option? That's a great question.
Well, thank you, Anne. If you do come across any resources, definitely send them our way. We will distribute them to the audience that is participating in today's webinar. With that in mind, thank you again so much to Anne for such a great presentation. By the way, as a reminder to the audience today, the presentation has been recorded and it will be posted online here in the next couple of days for on-demand viewing. A link will be emailed to everyone that has attended today. So be on the lookout for that. Feel free to distribute that to your colleagues, to your friends, to your networks, and please share this fantastic message of the benefits of return to work and optimizing FCEs and work hardening that Anne presented on today. Also, we are going to be providing CEU certificates to everyone that participated in today's call. Those will be issued in the next 24 to 48 hours, so be on the lookout for that. Once again, bear with me here. Once again, Workers' Comp in Motion is wanting to thank our sponsors for today. I want to give a very special shout out to Carrie Robinson from MedRisk for making this presentation possible today. Thank you so much, Carrie, for bringing Anne to us in such a great set of information for today's presentation. So hats off to you, and I owe you coffee for it. So it was a wonderful, wonderful presentation. So with that in mind, we want to say a great big thank you to all of our sponsors for today. And I want to share my screen with you, so bear with me for just a moment while I do that. Here we go. Can you see my screen there, Anne?
Yeah.
So we want to say thank you to all of our sponsors. Without them, this wonderful presentation would not be possible today. iRatings, SMS, ClaimLogix, ProCare, NewQuest, Institutes of Health, Remed, GenX, Optum, MedRisk, MacroPro, DentalWorks, California Orthopedic Institute, Ember Court Reporters, Corvell, Merge Investigations, and of course, Work Partners. Thank you all so much. And now, the moment we've all been waiting for, it is raffle time. So if you see your name on the screen, that means that you're a winner today. But honestly, in my mind, you are all winners. Although each person on this slide is a slightly bigger winner because they actually get a prize. So if you see your name listed here, Sandra, Desiree, Julie, Christy Simmons, Marlene, Lisa, Rosie Alvarez from Netflix, Lori Tibet, Tracy, Denise, Kimberly, Desiree, Sandra, Lori, Irene, Stephanie Reynolds, Eva Pina, Cynthia Ramirez, Judy, Mario, Tracy, and Alice. You are all winners today and have won a prize. The corresponding sponsoring company next to your name will be getting in touch with you and providing instructions on how you can claim your prize and how you can have it delivered so that you can have it in your possession. Once again, on behalf of Workers' Comp in Motion, and of course, Anne, today we want to say thank you again for joining us for today's wonderful presentation. Please stay in touch. We're going to continue to have much more educational content for you. And hopefully soon we'll be able to offer an in-person gathering again. So let's stay in touch and let's make it happen. And thank you so much again for today's presentation. Thank you all so much. Have a wonderful, wonderful afternoon.